Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to see us speak today on neurotoxins. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Guardian for inviting us to be here. I am Cassie Lane. This is Suzanne Jagger next to me. We are going to talk about the aesthetic advantage and how you can bring on neurotoxins, and if you're already doing it, how you could possibly expand neurotoxins. We're going to talk mostly about clinical, but we do promise to hit on some business stuff. We know that that's near and dear to all of our hearts as well. A little background, Suzanne and I, both CRNAs, we're the founders of Injectables EDU. Our primary goal is helping nurses and nurse practitioners, providers succeed in launching your aesthetics practices and growing it. We both started and have grown our own practices. We both currently have practices that bring in over $3 million a year. We have extensive experience in injectables, skincare, and business development.
Yep. So I've been a nurse for over 20 years, which is insane, right? Like you never think you're going to cross that threshold.
You don't look like it, though.
That's right. Thank you. I just counted now 9 years in aesthetics. I founded Aura out of the back of my car in 2016, so I know everything about bootstrapping it and growing it from absolutely zero, and also being out of work because I needed to make money. I founded this, and nothing like necessity gets you to hustle. So anyway, so I grew Aura Aesthetics now to almost $3 million, and I started teaching in 2018, and we co-founded Injectables EDU. And there's my office. That's one shot, and there's my lovely team.
Like I said, I'm Cassie Lane. Background is that I'm a nurse anesthetist. I love helping patients like boost that confidence. We're going to talk a lot today about bringing that inside out and kind of showing that world on the outside the way that we feel on the inside. To me, one of my biggest joys is actually just entrepreneurship. We love digging into KPIs. The business side for me is oftentimes an even bigger driver. It really excites me. That is the part that's different every day. Another really tentpole moment for me and belief is mentorship, and that has come from having the wonderful mentorship of this person beside me. She is the one who actually taught me my first Botox class, took me under her wing, and helped me to have just this really incredible success very quickly, helping me sidestep a lot of potholes and mistakes. Now, I still managed to make quite a few of my own, but that's something you're going to hear from us today over and over too, is that importance of community and mentorship. We really believe that other nurses and nurse practitioners, this community is our biggest asset, really not our competition. This is a picture of my team at my office in Richmond, Virginia. I have an office I own the building. It's a converted kind of old Cape Cod style house, so it's fun. It has a lot of color. The decoration feels very homey, so lots of different styles of offices that you can have.
All right, so the scope of today's discussion is really about bringing on neurotoxins into your practice and understanding basic injectables and whether this seems like a good fit, which we'll probably argue for you is a really good idea. There is just ever increasing demand in aesthetics and is an amazing complement to what you're already doing. And we find a lot of the people, the fear that they have, as Cassie likes to say, we come from the OR. We are never more scared than the first time we were injecting Botox and maybe dropping a brow. But I did high risk OB and I'm crashing 2 C-sections at the same time in a tertiary hospital in the middle of nowhere with no backup. I can do that, but I'm worried about Botox, seriously. So let's get over the fear of it and just learn the skill and then go forth and do amazing. That's what we want to do today. So we want to talk about understanding how to integrate aesthetics into your current established practice, because good news, I think most of you already, who's here already has a practice open, or who still hasn't started yet. So a couple people. Okay, so for most of you, you already have a client base. I started out in my car. That's a hard client base. So we can talk about and do, especially with Injectables EDU, we talk with understanding how people start from zero to some building on top of an established patient profile.
So what is aesthetic medicine? Aesthetic medicine is medical procedures aimed at improving the physical appearance and satisfaction of the patient using non-invasive to minimally invasive cosmetic procedures. We're big proponents that doing aesthetic medicine is a part of wellness. It is a part of treating a patient holistically, because feeling positive about yourself on the outside, and feeling confident, it really bleeds into and affects every single corner of your life, right? My confidence standing up in front of you guys today is stronger because I feel like I'm putting my best foot forward. And that isn't isolated, and that's not vain either, right? Helping you to feel stronger in your professional world, in your personal world, I would say that there's actually no better work than that. So bringing that inside to match outside, addressing mental health. Studies show that people who get Botox are happier. This is evidence-based. There's something, one of the theories is that by blocking the ability to make the face, that you're kind of hitting pause on that feedback cycle of being unhappy.
Yeah, getting over, I think, in the wellness community that there's like a vanity component that like, oh, I don't do that. I do functional medicine. I do holistic healing. Well, I think this is, if you want to talk about holistic, having people's outside match their inside is really part of that holistic component. As Cassie touched on, there's very much an emotional component to how we look, right? So we have no problem with coloring our hair, choosing the clothes we wear. Why not optimizing how we want our face to look and how we want to emote and show our face to the world, I think is just as important. So if you can think about it in that way, and think about like the real satisfying thing when I see patients is like the mom who had a new baby and she has a 3-year-old and her daughter was always asking her, why are you mad at me, mommy? Why are you mad at me? And so we take away the scowl, and now she has a better relationship with her daughter. Like, that is really what we're doing here. It's really a one-off where someone's like, I want to be a glamazon. Like that is not why people come to see you. Like, they functionally want to feel like how they want to feel, and this is part of it. So, it's just another care touch point. So included in all this is like neurotoxin treatments, but then dermal fillers, we'll go into that a little bit more later, but dermal fillers are just hyaluronic acid, sugar gel that we inject into the face to fill lost facial volume. We also have collagen stimulators like Sculptra or PLLA, Radiesse, which is a calcium hydroxyapatite. Those also are filler. Radiesse is a filler that also is collagen stimulating. PLLA is just a collagen stimulator. It's out of the scope for today, but if you guys want to talk about more of it later, we're happy to touch on it. We love Sculptra. Other aesthetics treatments, light-based treatments, lasers, all different kinds of lasers. Laser is not a laser is not a laser. When you talk about laser, that's like talking about, cars. You're like, well, but is it a Prius or a Mack truck? Like, completely different beasts. Like, you plug it in, it does stuff, but you use them for different things, okay? So, body contouring is also part of it. I have M-Sculpt in my office. That definitely is a nice complement with all the other things that we do. Laser hair reduction and hair growth stimulation, especially because wellness, we see so much in the skin and the hair with overall wellness, and so sometimes we're offering now Keravive treatment. You might inject PRP into the scalp. Those sorts of things are helping, and just so much more. Like, it's just a really fun field to make people feel better.
And then my plug that I like to put in whenever we touch on lasers is lasers are the one thing, or being very expensive medical devices are the one thing that will sink your practice. Of the practices that I have seen go under, there is pretty much almost always an expensive device behind it, and this is where really crowdsource the other people in your network and community to understand, what are people actually paying for these devices. Speaking of cars, pretty much buying a laser is like buying a used car. There's a lot of negotiations. If you pay full freight for something, you are getting had. The other thing too, in general, just a business metric, before you consider buying any piece of equipment that is in the multiple, let's say $50,000 to $100,000 or more, you need to have hundreds of clients. I'm talking like 750 or 1,000 patients before you're going to be able to have the repeat business. So these, salespeople, their job is to sell, and they're very good at it, right? And they are great resources. But if you're the only person that has it in the community, usually that's a red flag, not a green flag. So we are always a good resource, even if you just shoot out to us on Facebook group, anything like that. Like, what do you think? We're more often than not, I will tell you, we're usually like, nope, not a good idea yet.
Please text me. I have been the support person for someone that has a badgering laser person in their office, and they're like, should I buy this thing? Like I want to run pass interference on the laser thing.
Yeah, we support each other on that too. Like, we talk each other off the ledge. Like, no, you don't need to buy the $250,000, whatever it is.
No.
But I want it.
Yeah.
Okay, but I just want to make people pretty and make a little money too. Begin with the end in mind. That's something that Suzanne's really taught me. So as you're considering adding on aesthetics or as you're thinking about your business just in general, most important thing is, where are you headed? What does your ideal day look like? What does your ideal week look like? I want you to write that out. And then what you do is you work towards there. Guess what? Success can look like treating friends and family and getting your Botox for free. Success can look like having pop-up parties at a few local salons and doing mobile, and it pays for a really nice vacation once a year. Success can look like having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 multi-million-dollar locations. So what does success mean to you? And start there, and then you work towards that. For me, that exercise of what is my ideal week, looks like getting to spend the afternoon with my children, getting to go on a date with my husband on Friday. Now, it's taken me many years to get to that point, because guess what? Just like we're all know, it takes a lot of hustle to get there. But if you lose sight of what that goal is, then you'll never end up there. You might grow and grow and grow, and you might get millions of dollars, but if that wasn't your goal, then is that success? If you already have a practice where you're doing IVs, you're doing weight loss, I think these things fold, neurotoxins in particular, fold in really nicely. While you're sitting here getting your IV, did you know we offer Botox treatments? You could do it while they're getting their IV. As people start to feel more confident in their bodies with weight loss, they start to be like, what else can I do for myself to help myself look and feel better? How can you marry what you're currently doing with adding in aesthetics, which I'm going to tell you, aesthetics has much better margins and can be much more lucrative than IVs. We love weight loss. We both have very strong weight loss practices. Anybody who's doing weight loss knows that this is a very, unsecure time. We're not exactly sure what the future is going to look like. It's becoming more and more commoditized, right? Not a lot of skill to weight loss. People view it as just, like a medication, whereas there is a lot of skill to doing these aesthetic procedures that people really, really value.
Yeah, I'll touch a little bit more on what kind of practice are you trying to build, and having been someone that's working on trying to sell their practice eventually and exit entirely, the thing that they're always looking at is, what are your verticals, right? So what are your service offering? What's your case mix? What's your average price per service? And when you're doing really low cost services, that means you need to have high volume, right? It's always just a math problem. If it's a low cost service, you need to have high volume to make money. If you've got a high cost service, you can do low volume and make money, right? That's why, a Lamborghini, they can sell one a month or something because they're $1 million. I have no idea. I don't own a Lambo, but you know what I'm saying?
Not yet.
Right. Goals, man. That's on my vision board. Lambo, anyone? No, I have planes. That's a joke with my sister-in-law. We have planes, the short distance and the long distance. But, duh. Anyway, so the point is that this is another adjunct that is going to make your business more profitable, more marketable. And if you ever want to potentially exit, one more actual, vertical that you can lean into as a profit margin. So, but is the market oversaturated? We hear that a lot. There's a Botox spot in every corner, right? But that's also for a reason, because there's a lot of demand. And there's also a lot of bad people doing it. Not bad people, but not great at their job bad, okay? So what can you do different? You can be exceptional at what you do and learn how to do it well and give an amazing experience, and we'll talk more about that later and also lean into the marketing of that. But I'm just saying that there's a lot of opportunity. The market demand continues to grow as more treatments come out or more people get treated. There's less stigma. I mean, it was amazing even 10 years ago how much stigma was there Botox, but there used to be stigma about getting your hair colored. I mean, geez, you just can't win. Anyway. Do Botox.
Yeah, it's a very untapped market, and that's what all of the stats and that's the stats that you're seeing here. The growth in this space, it's becoming so much more mainstream to get neurotoxin. It's just a basic upkeep, just like getting your hair cut. And speaking of that, right, there's haircut places on every corner. A bunch of hairstylists work in the same room together. Somehow they're able to do this very nicely, and we're still working on that in our space. But there is a huge demand. Oftentimes people who are newer to neurotoxins, they're going to find a newer provider because you're going to have that availability. And if you have an established practice, you already have people who know you, like you, and trust you. And if they know, like, and trust you to take care of even other ways, they believe in your skill, they're going to trust you, with other procedures as well. This is more stats just kind of backing up that we're seeing huge growth in the med spa space. Yes, we're seeing a lot of providers coming in, but that's because all of us are also getting very interested on the consumer side, and then we're kind of like, I think I could do that as well. The average med spa revenue is $2 million, okay? There's a lot of demand, and these are high revenue procedures. Most med spas are single location, most of them are single owners. These stats are a little bit old, and the one thing I will say is the biggest area of growth is for nurse and nurse practitioner owners. I think this is such a great space. We're holistic providers. And I think we can support the patient, take the time with them, be very education focused, really work to the full scope of our practice. One thing we're big advocates for is we just are excited to see nurses, nurse practitioners be entrepreneurs, make that money for yourself. You know, we're tired of being at the sharp end. We're tired of making money for hospital systems, organizations, whatever it can be. And I think this is a really welcoming, great space that we can really shine and have a lot of success. Like Suzanne was saying, there is a lot of misconceptions. There's room for education when it comes to aesthetics. So I'll let you take it away for this one.
You know, so we're fighting two fronts. One is that people don't believe necessarily that the pictures are unaltered. Like people are like, oh, Angelina Jolie, she's a natural beauty. I had someone actually walk out of my office because she's like, those Kardashian girls are just lovely. I don't know why you'd say they had anything done. I'm like, you are Delulu. I don't know what to say. We're never going to see the same thing. So anyway, one thing we're battling is that the conception is like that people are just naturally beautiful and they don't use or need these things, especially like even within their own community. They don't know that their sister's getting it or their mom's getting it or whatever, their daughter. I had one of my favorite stories is this gal, she was one of our younger patients, came out after getting lip filler with us, and her mom walks in, she goes, that's why you asked for $500? Anyway, so oops. But the point is that people, you know, have this belief that people aren't actually doing this. Conversely, some people are like, I can't get a Botox treatment because I'm going to look like the next Real Housewife, right? And I'm like, nothing we are going to do today, unless you've got tens of thousands of dollars and are willing to sit under my needle and receive way too many treatments at one time, are we potentially even going to touch on getting you looking like a Real Housewife? Okay, that is a monthly, all the time sort of dealio.
And plastic surgery.
And plastic surgery. Let's talk about surgery.
Yeah, a lot of these people don't own up to having plastic surgery, and they're using filler as a scapegoat. And of course, with enough filler, enough anything, you can really mangle somebody and botch them. That's not what anybody in this room would ever do. But these famous people have unlimited budgets, right? And they're getting taken advantage of, and it is on the provider to be able to say, hey, stop. A good treatment, my least favorite thing is when people say to me, especially men, no offense, you guys, when they're like, I can always tell when somebody has lip filler. It's like, no, you can't. You can tell when somebody has bad lip filler. You can tell when somebody has bad Botox. If you can tell somebody has something done, it's because our brain is noticing like, hey, this doesn't look natural. The goal of these treatments is to look natural, and it's not to not age. It's to age gracefully. It's not to not look your age. It's to look and feel good at the age that you're at. So it's breaking that stigma that people are seeing portrayed in the media.
Yeah, for sure. And I love to tell people I have 170 units of tox in my face and jaw and neck. I have cheek filler, lip filler, Sculptra. I've done all the lasers in my office, all right? And I don't think you're looking at me going, oh my God, right? Because it's done well and it's not overdone. And that's the goal. The best injectable is imperceptible, right? So you should just be aging gracefully. But really, we're fighting also against this.
Yeah, people are terrified of this. I'm terrified of this, right? And so people are going to be looking at their provider as well. They want you to be repping, this space well. The overtreatment can be, really a big issue in providers as well, because again, there's just like famous people, there's this unfettered access to the treatments. But if you are not looking like this from getting Botox and getting reasonable amounts of filler. This is surgery. This is insane amounts of filler that, to your point, most people couldn't even afford to look like this. Not that anybody would want to.
Well, in that top one to Terry Hatcher, this is bad Botox, and I could go through and teach each injection point was blown on her, and this is what everyone's afraid of, and this is what good education prevents you from doing. But guess what? Someone is rich enough, is famous enough to get Terry Hatcher to come to their office so that they can do that. And I guarantee not one of our students have ever done that to a patient.
Yeah, I guarantee you what somebody coming fresh out of our class would do a better job than this.
Yeah.
And it goes back to where you said there's a lot of bad education out there. There's a lot of like providers that are not doing continuing education, and they're not doing their due diligence, and they're not giving good treatments, and it's more rampant than you think. So it feels like, oh, how can I come into this space and provide value? But 100%, you really can.
What they say, if you practice 15 minutes a day at something, you will be better than 90% of the people around you who do that thing. Like 15 minutes a day, like do your Duolingo, guys. Like the same thing here. You watch some injecting videos, you practice a little bit, you're gonna get good in no time. Anyway, let's talk about the aging process. So we're gonna get into a little more clinical stuff. So the triangle of youth is something that we're constantly referring back to because gravity always wins, and we're always fighting laxity. But good, what's unfortunate about it is that nothing in our toolbox fights laxity like surgery. And the last thing we want to do is fight laxity with fillers. And Botox relaxes muscles. So is that helping laxity? No. So where does its place belong? And we'll talk about that. But let's understand that the whole goal is to create everything high and tight and to reduce the appearance of things getting this rotational direction of like laxity, and that's why we get heavy and hypermobile in the lower face. So Botox definitely has a key component to this, but the last thing you want to do is deal with a patient who comes in, grabs their face and goes, I want to look like this and I just need some Botox. Like that's a facelift, that's the facelift move, okay? And we don't do that in our office. So how do we take someone who's coming in for this consult and says, I just need some, Botox or filler and, steer that consultation in the right direction? That's part of the trick of all these things.
So starting at age 28, the rate of our collagen production goes down. We're actually losing more collagen annually than we're producing. So that plays a huge role in aging. Like Suzanne was saying, we want to treat things multimodally. So volume loss is an important part of aging. That's where dermal fillers come in. You're replenishing some volume. Now that can't be the only tool because that's not the only sign of aging. Other things that we see is elastosis. We lose the elasticity of the skin. We see collagen depletion. So it's really important that we're doing things to treat the skin, make the skin as strong as possible, treating skin health. And that's why people start to look fake when we're only relying on fillers and kind of compensating for things that are not the result of volume depletion.
And here's an example. We love twin studies, they're great. So twin on the left has never had tox and twin on the right has, and she just looks fresher, brighter, right? And that continues to age better over time. So a lot of what we're trying to do is not just we want to do prevention and treatment, and we'll go into a little bit about what the treatment is, but prevention is starting young. If we tip over our collagen curve at 28, well, that means it's a reasonable time to start thinking about tox. And we need to switch our brain to think like, oh, that's a vanity thing, they're too young to start that, but really it's whenever the skin damage starts, and it's around there that we start treating patients. And we may not treat them aggressively with 170 units. I'm 47, like that's appropriate, but I'm not putting 170 units in a 28-year-old. Like that's not appropriate. No, they got other things to spend money on. It's not what they need, okay? But depending on how much melanin they have in the skin, how much sun damage they have, what their genetics are, what their treatment outcomes goals are, like the point is if the goal is to never necessarily have wrinkles or to age gracefully, starting earlier is better, because trying to correct is a completely different beast than never having to treat in the first place.
Yeah, the best wrinkle is the one you never get.
Yeah.
And depending on your background, somebody who's got a very light skin type, has less melanin production, they're going to start to see etched in wrinkles or static wrinkles much younger. So it may not even be preventative, even if with somebody in their early 20s. But the way Botox works is it relaxes the muscle that makes the face, that makes the wrinkle. Now, I do a lot of education in my office with my patients about these two different types of wrinkles. So static is going to be an etched in line that's on your face, even at rest. A dynamic wrinkle is going to be one that when your face is at rest, there is no line. When you activate a muscle group, you're going to see it. So like on my face at rest, I don't have any wrinkles around my eyes. I smile, I start to get some. So those dynamic wrinkles are typically going to be treated with one single treatment of Botox. Now, static lines, because the way Botox works is it relaxes the muscle that makes the face. If you don't have to engage that muscle group to elicit that wrinkle, you're probably not going to see much result of that static wrinkle after one treatment. Think back to what I told you about collagen too. Now, if I do a Botox treatment with somebody with a static wrinkle that's in their 20s and they've still got a lot of that collagen production power, we're gonna see that wrinkle smooth out because collagen, when the muscle's relaxed, is gonna come and kind of heal that wrinkle, smooth it out. If somebody is in their 70s and they've been on that curve of collagen reduction since their late 20s, they're gonna have less ability naturally to fill in that wrinkle. So oftentimes Botox is not the tool that I'm gonna pull for somebody who comes in. They have not ever had Botox in their life and they're 70 years old and their face is, full of static wrinkles. In 2 weeks, they're gonna say to me like, Cassie, you don't know what you're doing. I look the exact same. So education is really a key component in setting realistic expectations. I don't care what it is that you're already providing in your office, set realistic expectations so you guys are on the same page of how to measure success, and it will lead to happier patients, which will lead to happier you as well.
So a little pharmacology here. So the mechanism of action has to do with blocking acetylcholine at the motor end plate. That's all it does. It's irreversible, so you can never, there's no antidote for a neurotoxin treatment. But good news, it will always go away because the receptors regenerate. And so no matter what, you can never, ever, ever cause permanent damage with a Botox treatment. You just can't do it. Good news, right? So that number one should alleviate some of the fear that you may have of injecting, because as much as we might be nervous, like running a code. Like I've never seen more nurses nervous about like a Botox treatment, like when it really can't, there's no life and death here, guys. No one dies from a Botox treatment. It just doesn't happen. Great. So it does block acetylcholine, and dose equals duration. So the more we flood these receptors and block them, the longer your treatment lasts. They still eventually will go away though.
And to piggyback on what you said about complications, I mean, that's definitely, and even just talking to people at this conference, what I hear the most is kind of fear of having a complication. And just like whatever you do in your day job, whether you're walking around the hospital, you don't walk around crippled by fear that somebody's going to code, right? It's a bad day when somebody codes, but you're prepared, you know what to do. And you've only got minutes to deal with that. In aesthetics, these are all temporary things that you have hours to days to deal with. It's going to self-resolve, and you can't be so worried that it inhibits you from doing it. God forbid you even have a lid ptosis, which is kind of the most severe thing that you'll see with Botox. And guess what? I've had that happen. I do enough Botox, it's going to happen. Not everybody's anatomy got the memo. It's supposed to look exactly like the book. And guess what? Those people lived, I educated them. Almost all the people I have complications with, they stay in my practice because I show up for them, I support them, I educate them, and we all live to see another day. So this is something that is, I think, very approachable and doable, and sometimes in our brains it can get a little bit blown up, and I was completely guilty of that as well. So let's talk a little bit about the history, how neurotoxins got started. So it's a muscle relaxing substance that was found in sausage. It was originally used by an ophthalmologist, Dr. Alan Scott, for strabismus or lazy eye. And it was sold to Allergan in 1989. Botox was originally FDA approved for strabismus. 2002, so that was a long time later, we see our first cosmetic indications, and that was for the glabella, which are the angry 11 lines. 2004, we see it for hyperhidrosis or excessive sweating. In 2010, it's approved for migraines. There's a number of areas that we commonly treat that are still not FDA approved, so very common in this space to be doing non-FDA approved areas, like the whole lower face is non-FDA approved. And you see there's a really strong mix of therapeutic and cosmetic options, so that's something you can consider. I do a lot of TMJ treatments in my office. I don't do migraines because that can typically be covered by insurance, and I don't work with insurance. But you can do trigger spots, so Botox is like a cool melding too of, of course I talk to my TMJ patients about, hey, are you interested in any cosmetic treatments?
Just because this comes up and it's kind of a fun fact, let's talk about how much does it take to kill you with Botox? Because people are like, won't it give me Botox or won't it give me botulism? No. We are only one using type A and B. So A is what all the commercial grade neurotoxins are. Botox is the Jeuveau, Dysport. Mild block is something you'll see in neurology for spasticity and cervical dystonia. They'll use mild block. Please do not use that for aesthetic purposes. There really is a whole arm of using neurotoxins as a medical indication and a whole arm of treating as a aesthetic indication. We are only doing aesthetics. I really steer away from doing like trigger point treatments, depending on what your scope of practice is and what your insurance coverage is. Like, I don't want to treat migraines because I have not ruled out that they don't have a tumor. You know, like that is not my jam, and so I don't want to get involved in that. If they get a relief of their tension headaches because I treat their forehead, yay! But am I going and doing all this occipital stuff? No, nor should I, because again, that's out of the scope for my practice. So just stay in your lane is all I'm saying. Here's also a fun party fact. So the LD50 of Botox is really 130,000 units. That would be over 1,300 vials, and that's IV push. So the amount that we're using is tiny. And when people are like, oh my God, 100 units, that's so much. You're like, I don't even know what thousandth it is that we're using. So everyone can just breathe. It'll be okay. And no, it's not going to make you stop breathing. The fact that they say this in the videos or in the commercials,
and that would be a lot of those side effects that they list, like bladder spasticity. That's because Botox is commonly used and injected into the bladder for different diseases, right? It relaxes the muscle. So, sphincters are muscles. It's a lot of therapeutic uses for Botox are going to be injecting different sphincters and things like that. So, yes, when it says like difficulty breathing, it paralyzes the muscle. If you accidentally injected somebody's vocal cords, or around your recurrent laryngeal nerve, you're going to see that. But that is nothing that would be any sort of risk for what we're doing. So there's now 6 actually neurotoxins we have listed, and those 2, since we made this slide, there's been 2 new ones. Like Suzanne said, they're all botulinum toxin type A. They all do the same thing. I compare it to Pepsi versus Coke. So they're both sodas. The active ingredients are caffeine and sugar. They have a slight difference in flavor profile. When it comes to neurotoxins, I could inject half of your face with one neurotoxin and your other half of your face with a different one. You would not be able to tell the difference. There is, most of the variations actually come with manufacturer process, but same active ingredients. And a lot of it is marketing. You have Botox, Dysport, Xeomin, Jeuveau. Last year, Daxxify came to market. And just recently, in the last couple months, we've gotten a Korean one called Lativo. So I think we'll be seeing more come to market, but it's important, your patients will get very focused on product choice. It's something that they can control, right? Makes sense. But I just do a lot of education with them. It is much more important in the hands of, who's injecting it. This is just a tool, right? You're not going to your hairstylist and asking them what type of scissors they're using. They're all scissors. It's really the skill that's behind it that's the most important.
Yeah, never let your patient dictate care, whether it's number of units, product choice. Yeah, question?
I don't know if I'm correct with this, but I had a client, and she was just talking about the Botox. I don't know if it works out. But she said that she spoke with a clinician and she wanted to do Botox, and she didn't want to do Botox for long periods of time because it has more than
Yeah.
And because I think,
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those small variations. Resistance is a very small, it's very rarely seen where somebody truly gets resistance to neurotoxin. It can happen. Factors that will play into it is primarily amount of units and frequency of exposure. So that resistance issue is less common in a cosmetic scope, more common when you're using high doses to treat the bladder or different areas where therapeutic.
Like cerebral palsy, where they're using thousands to release like the calf muscle.
Yeah, it's not within the scope of our talk today to get into the weeds about some of the differences, but yes, there are accessory proteins attached to Botox, and some of the other products, for example, Xeomin has no accessory proteins. There's also serum albumin elements that are in some of them and not in others, and these are kind of slight differences, but when it comes to resistance, it's theorized really what they're saying is that you get antibodies to these accessory proteins, not to the botulinum toxin type A, but you're getting into like they're being educated on like a very nuanced kind of like in the weeds topic. And but it can be something that, providers can teach to, saying, hey, this is a benefit of this medication, is that very slight risk of having a intolerance is going to be even less or non-existent with this other product.
It's all marketing, let's be real. Sure.
I actually have a question just to kind of piggyback on that. So before I started injecting, the place I went to would only put Botox into the masseter. So saying that was the way that it had to be. And I was a pediatric ICU nurse by trade, and we did inject Botox for like cerebral palsy patients. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. So is that not true?
So
No, it might be on label do they have an on label
yeah,
indication?
I'm not sure if it's FDA approved for masseters.
I don't know. That's probably their policy. That has absolutely nothing to do with the product itself.
And for insurance,
Yeah, insurance might have a field.
yeah,
on that
so
subject.
if you're getting in the hospital, if there's any insurance component, Botox has two different, they have a therapeutic
Yeah.
and they have a cosmetic. And you actually order Botox cosmetic, or you order Botox therapeutic. And it plays into what Suzanne was saying. When you're doing therapeutic indications, you're getting into like this medical side that's Botox therapeutic. But as far as efficacy of the treatment, it does not matter which one you use.
I'll use anything I have open for masseters.
Yeah, and when you're cash pay, it really doesn't matter. But that provider could be saying, hey, I feel more comfortable because this has been FDA approved and tested with Botox. There's a lot of off-label stuff, but that's probably where they were coming from. But yeah, you were saying, which I don't want it to get lost because I do think it's a really important point in aesthetics, is that you would never let your patient come in and say, well, I know you wanted me to take a 7-day course of antibiotics, but I just would prefer 3.
You're stealing all my good lines.
Yeah, remember. Remember, this is still a medical procedure. You're still a medical provider with your license, and this is still your patient. So I think sometimes because this is cash pay, we're much more likely, we want to get good reviews. We want to make patients happy. And that is more top of mind for sure than when we're in the hospital. But don't let it get out of sight, and don't let your patient dictate treatment, because at the end of the day, they actually won't be happy with that. If you give somebody a half dose, they're not going to remember that they paid like $200 less. They're going to remember that their treatment didn't last, and that's what they're going to tell their friend. So remember, still medical treatment, you're still in charge, and you still have the burden of giving appropriate treatment. That means not over-treating, that means not under-treating.
Right, so here's a map of all the areas that you can treat, and the number one thing we see new providers doing is underdosing because they don't want to drop something. All the complications that come from injecting have more to do with inappropriate placement and not understanding anatomy. Fear of injecting is fear of anatomy is the great saying of Dr. Swift, who's one of the godfathers of aesthetics. But underdosing just shortens the duration of your treatment. It is if it blocks the receptor, it blocks the movement. All you're doing by giving half a dose is decreasing the amount of time that block stays on. All right, so that just means a lesser treatment. And then they think that it sucks, and then they say you don't know what you're doing, and then you cheated me, and then they tell their friends, and then you get a bad Yelp review. It's just a cascade of badness. So please appropriately treat your patients with the appropriate dose, right? And the more you learn about anatomy, the more you learn about the different products, because each one of them has nuance to it. Then you'll be able to choose the right product and the right amount for the right patient.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind with neurotoxins is, for the most part, either this muscle is relaxed or paralyzed, or it's not. It's much more like an on-off switch. By underdosing somebody, you're not giving them a 50% block. You're giving them 50% duration. So I think there is kind of a misconception of like, well, I want to have 50% movement. For the most part, that's typically not possible except for when it's setting up or wearing off. So dose equals duration. Anatomy with neurotoxins is so crucial. These are very specific targeted muscles. Most of the muscles either have something below it, above it, to the side of it. Complications all come from the neurotoxins spreading to a different nearby muscle group that we did not intend to treat. Obviously not within the scope of today's talk for us to get in depth into the different musculature, but this is a nice little picture of a lot of the key muscles that we deal with. But it is great because neurotoxin is very straightforward. It is in some ways very formulaic in the sense that if you truly understand where the muscle insertion point is, where it's ending up, what its function is, you can become truly an expert with Botox. And like you've said, you'd be shocked how many providers are out there and don't have this really in-depth understanding. I have a patient of mine, she has Bell's palsy, and for years she couldn't find a provider that would even touch her, because guess what, there's no textbook that tells you how to treat this person, because you've got to just look at the face. With this patient, she has areas of hyperactivity that have compensated for areas that are paralyzed. But Bell's palsy is technically a contraindication to Botox. A lot of people wouldn't do it. But when you truly understand and can understand the muscle groups and assess where this movement is and do this strong assessment, you can do these incredibly advanced treatments successfully. And all of that comes from this. I would say fillers are a little bit more artistic, having that eye that you speak of. I'm not a believer that you have to have a naturally aesthetic eye. I don't believe that I did at all, honestly. I think I've grown one with, education, and I'm a very anatomy-based practitioner, and I think, that's a strength of mine. But understanding this anatomy is what will really make you a great Botox provider.
And also just understanding the physics of it. So for creating harmony in the face and creating what they call facial balancing, you need to understand that every muscle is in perfect balance with its opposing muscle group. And so when you treat one, you have an equal and opposite reaction by that other muscle group. So you don't want to hit a depressor without hitting the elevator, and vice versa. So we want to treat, and that's why we talk about a lot in our practice, treating the whole face, because as soon as I treat one area, the energy in the body drives to the unblocked muscle. And so you have a lot of unintended consequences. So another thing I see with beginning injectors is that they're just treating, they just wanted this and they don't like their forehead lines. Or worse, they just hate their forehead lines and they only treat the forehead. Well, now the depressors are unopposed, and I just totally dropped their eyebrow because I took away all the lifting power of their forehead. So understanding why you're treating what and how much and where is really, really critical to being a great injector. And what we see a lot of is people out in the world who go take crappy classes that use these injection masks with like the FDA approved thing from 2002, which is a 5-point injection, across the forehead and 3 points here and here. But just as do you hang the same IV for every patient? No. Do you put them on the same amount of semaglutide? No, because some people respond at 10 and some people respond at 100. And same thing with Botox. There's that much variability in patient to patient. And so you really need to scale your treatment and treatment locations based on the wrinkles and the movement that you see in front of you.
And that knowledge comes with time. I mean, there's something to be said for, we're big proponents of teaching a very measured, kind of formulaic way of injecting at the beginning that is going to be a good treatment for pretty much all people. It's going to be safe and have good outcomes, and that is what you use as a springboard to start to just see time after time after time of, you start to say, well, I know when somebody has this little wrinkle close to their eyebrow that I'm going to need to do this. But everybody starts somewhere, and I do think Botox, unlike many other things, it is kind of low-hanging fruit, not a huge entry level to get started with it and start building that skill up. And you will give people good treatments at that beginning time. It's like skiing. Like, it's easy to get up on skis with neurotoxin. It's really hard to be a really advanced, awesome skier. But with time, you really do get there. Bringing people back for touch-ups and seeing your results and tweaking them is the biggest way that you'll learn. And the only way you can do it is to do it, right? How we learned at getting good at IVs, how we learned at doing every other clinical skill was by getting the appropriate education and jumping in and doing it. All the neurotoxins come as a powder in a vial. There's no liquid in it. Currently, none of the ones on the market come pre-mixed or reconstituted. We don't dilute Botox. We reconstitute it. The vial can even look empty, some of them, which is can be a little bit jarring. So the amount that you inject is wholly dependent, the amount of volume, on how much volume of bacteriostatic saline you put into the vial. So a Botox unit is a measure of biological activity, not a volume or a weight. So that's something that you'll wrap your mind around as you start to use the medication, because it is a little bit different than most things that we deal with.
So a couple other things. Remember, when your patient gets a treatment, it takes a few days to start to work, and each product sets up a little faster or slower than the others. So it takes a couple days for it to start to work, peak effect in day 14 to 21. And that's also the time frame that we want to do a touch-up. we wanted to talk about marketing. A great marketing component is that when you pay for your treatment with us at Aura Aesthetics, you get a touch-up appointment, and I will fix whatever isn't, totally set up properly at one price. You're not coming in, I'm not going to charge you an extra $20 because I have to touch up my work. I make my best guess, and you can kind of build that into your fee structure so that the last thing you want to do is charge someone $700 for a treatment. Then they come back and honor you with their presence 2 weeks later for a 5-minute appointment so that you can fix your work, and you're going to charge them $20. Please don't. So that's a very good marketing component, is that you're going to stand behind your work and offer that comprehensive care. But you only do that in that right time window, because beyond that, you got a Botox clock, and that Botox clock, beyond that 3 weeks, we're starting a new Botox clock. So you're not constantly treating people throughout their treatment program. One, because of that resistance we talked to, the more times the body is exposed to an antibody or forms an antibody against a toxin, the higher risk of having a problem. So people that are constantly touching things up are the ones that are mostly going to have a problem. You really don't see that all that often. But then we want to see that we give an appropriate dose and it lasts 3 to 4 months. At that 3 to 4 month mark, we hope that they're around 70 to 80% still unblocked, so that their movement is back but not fully backed, because we want to build on that so that that skin is never getting fully re-wrinkled. We turn over our skin every 72 days, and so the whole point of stopping the motion that makes the wrinkle makes that wrinkle go away, because the new skin that comes underneath it is nice and healed, and that wrinkle starts to efface. So if you have patients that are coming in sporadically, you're not serving them. They are not getting corrective treatment, and you're not getting really preventative treatment either, because that skin is constantly getting re-damaged with movement.
Yeah, it's good to educate your patient on why it can be really beneficial to keep up with consistent Botox treatments. They don't have to. Some people worry it's like dyeing your hair. Once you do it, it's going to look weird if you just let it go. Not the case. It's just going to wear off gradually and go back to baseline. But if you really want to make progress in smoothing out any of those static wrinkles, then you want to come see me every 3 months consistently.
Yeah, shoot. Great question, right here.
Yes, so typically on the package insert, it's going to say 24 hours. Now again, we're going back to that's what's FDA approved. Also, Botox vials are only supposed to use for a single patient. Industry standard is to be able to use a single vial for multiple patients. Industry standard is to use bacteriostatic saline instead of normal saline. Industry standard is to allow, based on studies, evidence shows that the potency of these neurotoxins are not affected for 6 to 8 weeks after they're reconstituted, as long as they're refrigerated. Some of these neurotoxins need to be refrigerated before they've been reconstituted, but all of them need to be refrigerated after they've been reconstituted. And that's the beauty of using bacteriostatic saline as well, as you're going to have that element that's stopping any bacterial growth in it.
Yep. All right, so compliance is something we're constantly dealing with. So every state is different, and there isn't a day that goes by that we don't get the question, Cassie and Suzanne, what are the laws of my state? I don't know. I didn't go to law school in your state, and I'm really sorry. But we are happy to direct you to people who do know the laws in your state. And we really, there's lots of resources out there. But please be familiar with your scope of practice within your own state organization. Do not call your board of anything. They usually know nothing, and they're not particularly helpful. You're going to get more helpful with whatever, the scope of practice document on the website. There's the Board of Nursing, the receptionist at the Board of Nursing was giving out all sorts of interesting advice over the phone to people that called, and she didn't know anything. Anyway, just throwing that out there. You never know who's answering the phone when you call anyway.
Yep. Well, we also have a really good blog post on
Yes, we do.
injectablesedu.com that walks you through this in a more extended version of how to find out your state laws. So
Yes.
check that out if you're in this category that you're not sure about your state laws. Piggybacking on the nursing board, anything you get from any official board, pharmacy board, nursing board, anything like that, I always recommend doing it via email so you have it in writing.
Yes.
So if you are told something that's inaccurate, which is possible, these are clear as mud. So that's why, it varies so much state to state. So sometimes even the boards don't have a lot of clarity on who can practice how and who can do what. So get everything in writing. And to Suzanne's point, remember the Board of Nursing's job is to protect patients. It's not to advocate for your scope of practice or for you to excel in your profession. So go to whatever board represents you, whether it's the AANP or AANA, whatever it may be. Those can sometimes be a better frontline resource, and whatever you get in writing. And again, we have a lot more information on this because it's a very nuanced topic.
Yeah, go to our website for more resources on how to get help on that. Oh, did we get off on?
Yeah, you do this one.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about why it's profitable to bring Botox into your clinic and how it adds up. So one thing is when you've got a low volume or a low cost product, you need to have high volume, right, in order to generate revenue. Well, good news with Botox is that you have a high revenue driver, and that means that you can do lower volumes in order to generate income. So we just ran a case study here saying that if you're charging $12 a unit, and we'll talk pricing, please do not be the low cost leader. I cannot stress this enough. If you're competing on price, it's a race to the bottom because eventually you're not making any money. And you're not building any kind of client base that is going to be reliable and come back to you because they are only chasing the cheapest product. So this is true for any service that you offer. Compete on experience, not on price. You can choose one, but not both. All right. So if you're going to charge $12 a unit, which is roughly the minimum, I would say, and that has to do with what your consumable cost is, so you got to make money on this, right? If we don't have a business, we can't take care of people, and we need it in order to make a profit. So let's do $12 a unit, and we inject on average 10 tox patients a week, and we do a couple syringes of filler, then we can generate an extra $8,500 of revenue. Once we subtract out our consumables cost, our COGS, cost of goods sold, of $3,000, we are left with $5,500 a week of revenue, which is roughly $20,000. That's great revenue. And that is recurring revenue because tox wears off. It's a gift. God forbid we get permanent tox. We're all hosed, okay? Game over, okay?
You'd really be sweating when you were doing that.
Oh, yeah, really? Oh, man. So, yeah, who wants to do permanent tox? Anyone? Yeah, no. Same thing with permanent filler. We never inject permanent filler. That's for plastic surgeons in the OR. There's a product called Belafil. Never touch it, okay? Thank you.
Well, also, Botox should be a very lucrative service in your practice. You'll sometimes hear and see people saying, oh, Botox is a loss leader. Not in my practice, not by a long shot. Tox is one of the most profitable things that I do in my practice. And I know that because I track my KPIs like a hawk. There's ways to be smart about it. One of them is this pricing piece. One of this is product choice piece. One of this is understanding your payroll piece. But Botox is by no means, when you're doing it right, should it be a loss leader in your practice. It should be one of the most lucrative things that you do. And it's one of the things, the things people come through my door for is Botox and weight loss. Those are my two biggest lead generators. And then I go to work and educating them about all the other wonderful things that I do in my practice. But ask yourself, what are your lead generators? And you need your lead generators ideally to be, they're your bread and butter. They're what, keep the lights on, and Botox should be that for you. And that's something that we really lean into, making sure that people are profitable. And we see a lot of times practices that are not profitable. And I think that's where this idea of it being a loss leader comes from, because people aren't knowing how to do it right. And that's where community and mentorship really plays an important role, and having good advice. Service integration. So in my opinion, Botox is this easier, and I say Botox meaning all neurotoxins, kind of like Kleenex. Neurotoxin is going to be that easy lift to fold into your practice nicely. It doesn't cost a lot of money. I'd say $10,000 or so to get the skill and get this up and running in your practice. I think it probably costs that much to be a Stella and Dot rep or something. But it's pretty easy to bring it onto your practice, I would say. Dermal fillers, it has that little higher barrier to entry. It's something that ideally you really want to be repeating more often. It's really difficult to do dermal fillers if you're just doing it once or twice a month. So I recommend starting with Botox, building that strong base, and then when there's that demand for dermal fillers from your established client base, that's when you go and invest in that training and invest in bringing on the products that you need for that. There's also higher complications that need to be dealt with. Like we said with Botox, best and worst thing about Botox is it lasts 3 months. So any complication that you have, is going to self-resolve.
So back to, here's the marketing component, like educating to sell, like educating people on why they need the treatment that they need, because I can't tell you how many times patients are like, no one's ever told me that before. No one's ever explained it to me this before. No one's ever actually assessed me. Like they just come in and say you want a treatment and they just do something. I'm like, that's assault, So really learning how to properly assess, which is not rocket science, guys. This is extremely attainable and doable and learnable and executable. So like what a great gift to have this kind of service available to you. So you're going to educate your patients, and that's something you can compete on that other people cannot take away, because they will not understand it as well as you can choose to understand it. So understand your consultation strategies, understanding, educating them about the benefits of regular, consistent treatments and what the treatment goals are.
Yeah, definitely. It's a skill like anything else, but just like all the other clinical skills that we have in our tool belt, it's something that gets learned with education, with repetition. One of my biggest pet peeves is seeing, educators in our space stand up and make it seem like it's so complicated and it's really that I know how to do it better than anybody and you can't do it, and making it seem far out of reach, when really like our approach is very much like, hey, we did this, you can do this too. Let us show you how. It doesn't necessarily always make it less scary, but it makes you know that it is doable, very much so. We also like to remind you that as a wellness provider already in your space, you are the unique selling proposition. Mm-hmm. People trust you. They know that you're somebody that looks as a person in a holistic way and does a holistic treatment plan. I think this is something that somebody, like I said, knows you, likes you, trusts you. They're going to continue to do that. And your dedication to the patient, your dedication to your business, that follow through. Most places don't even do touch-ups. Mm-hmm. So just like that level of expertise and follow-up that you bring is going to set you apart.
Yeah, so you can always compete on experience. You can always level up your experience with that patient instead of competing on price. So it is always a race to the bottom. I think I touched on this before, and it is my hill to die on, that if you're doing $10 talks or the person down the street's doing, like, I know in Idaho there's someone doing $7 talks. First of all, that is not legitimate product. Okay, they have billboards in Idaho. Plus in Idaho that anyone can inject, your plumber could be an injector. It's legal there. Sounds amazing, right? So the one, we just know how much the product costs. You saw up there, there's no way someone is charging $7 a unit for a legitimate product. They're either watering it down or it's fake.
And this is where I add in, sometimes people, they don't know that they're not making money.
Yes,
that's what
true
we
too.
see a lot. There's a lot of money going out, there's a lot of money coming in, and these practices mean well, but instead of basing their price based on cost of goods and what payroll is going to cost them and like having a strategy, they're just looking around and saying, I'm going to beat the lowest competitor. Yeah. And you can be losing money on all your hard work, yeah. And then you're paying your medical director some percentage or something. And yeah. So we're here to help sort through that stuff.
Exactly. And so that's something we talk about in our training and talk about with anytime you bring on a service, is really understanding the marketing component and the pricing component of building this practice and doing it profitably.
We hit on this. Here's some tips for things we'd like for you guys in your next steps to look for. All trainings are not made the same, just like not all providers. So ongoing mentorship, you don't want a place that's going to drop you like a hot potato after your training. You're going to have ongoing questions. You're going to need ongoing guidance. You want to find something that has pre-work, didactic, ongoing access so you can look back. I encourage everybody to look at our class a year after they do our training, because you're going to get like this whole next level of meaning out of it. Consistency with instructors, newest evidence-based techniques, hands-on, geared at, whether NPs, RNs, covers business in depth. I tell you what, the hardest thing of this business is the business stuff. You will learn the muscles, you will learn the needle, you will learn the placement, okay? What is most of us don't have a background in is having an MBA. This one does, but I do not. So the business stuff is very, that is the ongoing challenge. Do not undervalue that. Do not ignore it just because you don't know much about it. That is not an option. And investing in a class is only an investment if you leave with the skill. Okay, so if you pay something cheaper, but you don't have any skill, at the end of the day, then that really didn't serve you.
Yeah, we really also want to lean into like the concept that there's so much competition out there and that everyone's kind of an enemy. Like aesthetics, for whatever reason, has just got this cattiness thing. And I'd love to make the analogy I think we touched on earlier is hairdressers somehow manage to cut hair next to each other in the same salon and have their own client base and cut and color hair. And they're not like, don't look at the way I cut bangs. I'm not going to tell you. It's secret. Like there's no, geez, people. So in the other class, someone was like, I need to learn sculpture, but the person training is like my biggest competitor down the street. I said, great. Like, this is the best. Like, you're going to get to see behind the scenes. And she's willing to train. Like, why wouldn't you? This is amazing, right? So we train people in our own city. I helped train a girl that ended up opening up less than half a mile from me. Like, cool. But people choose you because of you and your unique proposition. You know, people love that my space is all neutrals. It's really kind of bland, but very clean. People love it like it's clean and peaceful. Cassie's place is so fun and colorful. Like even those sorts of things. I have wine on tap at my place. True story. And no one drinks it. Like I hardly ever replace it, but they love the idea of it, right? And I'm selling an experience. So like they're like, you have wine on tap. I'm like, I know. Yeah, and it's open anytime, honey. Just come on by. And occasionally some moms come in before drop-off, have a glass of wine, and then go to the kids' pickup. Like, that's the sort of community that we're talking about, like, within our office. And then within the injecting community, we've created a whole network of people. We have, like, 6,000 people in our Facebook group. We have over 12,000 people in our entire injectable EDU world that are here to support each other because we build it on the foundation that because you succeed doesn't mean it hurts my success. Right? We all can succeed together, and in fact, all boats rise together. And that's really the mentality that should be there. So we don't undercut, we support.
Yeah, I think that's the foundation really of what we've built with Injectables EDU is trying to be that one small change for the next generation of injectors. Like, it's like how nurses, I feel like it used to be so much more eat your young. Hopefully that's getting better out there.
Social.
But you know, there's no more eating your young. Like let's support each other. This Facebook group is a really safe spot to ask both clinical questions, business questions. We're in there almost every day. I'll put just a very quick plug in. April 26th through 28th in Orlando, we're doing our Injectables EDU Summit. Which is a wonderful conference just like this one, very small, 100 people. It's all really geared at aesthetics, it's geared at business stuff primarily with some sprinkled in clinical. We have met our time. We're happy to stay. There's nobody coming in directly after us is my understanding, so we're happy to answer questions in the group setting. We're also happy to hang out up here and answer one-on-one questions as well. Anybody? I love that you guys had questions for us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please bring more questions.
Yeah, you guys whoever wants to hang and hear questions, please do.
Oh, we have to do this one too. You need this in order to get your CME. So
and they're going to send it out to you as well. So, yeah, question.